Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Podcast, the official podcast of the Pride of Dayton Marching Band. My name is Ben Muller, and today we have a very special episode for you all. These members had a final season unlike no other last year, and on September 11th at the football game against Eastern Illinois, these members got to have one final performance with the Pride of Dayton. They are the members of the Pride of Dayton class of 2020. Up first, he has an identical twin. Outside of pod, he would often recruit friends to play basketball at the rec, go disc golfing with his roommates, or you could find him participating in Crew, the Campus Crusaders for Christ. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Biology, minor in Medicine and Society from Grassy Point, Michigan. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Seth Adams. Say hello, Seth.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Up next, she teaches 5th through 12th band, high school choir, and 7th grade general music right now, and she recently got married to her high school sweetheart. Outside of pod, she was in Symphonic Wind Ensemble, Tuba Euphonium Ensemble, Sigma Alpha Iota, and an intern at New Horizons Band, and a staff member at the Chaminade Julienne Eagle Pride Marching Band. She graduated with a Bachelor's of Music in Music Education from Versailles, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Emily Kramer Bargy. Say hello, Emily.
Hi, everybody.
And finally, even though trumpet was his primary instrument, he also played the recorder pretty well. Outside of pod, he was in a lot of other ensembles, including, but not limited to, the University Jazz Band, Symphonic Wind Ensemble, Javanese Gamelan, Early Music Ensemble, and World Music Choir. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Music in Music Education from Pickerington, Ohio. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ronnie Hammond. Say hello, Ronnie.
Hello.
And welcome to the show, guys. How are you all doing?
Great.
Good.
Awesome.
Ready to talk about some pod stuff.
Yes, exactly right. So let's start talking about the 2020 season. There was a lot of mystery at first for what the 2020 Pride of Dayton season would be like. What were your guys' first thoughts with the 2020 season before it even started?
Well, we did quite a bit of planning. Emily and I were on pod council that summer. I remember a lot of Zoom hours, kind of going over what the protocol was going to be, what Mr. Will's vision was going to look like. And definitely there were just in terms of behind the scenes work, there was incredible amounts of time and effort put in by Mr. Will, the CEOs of that year, and then myself, Emily, and Nicole were the drum majors of that season. So that was a big thing to note, is that it took a whole lot of extra planning, but we're really glad how it turned out.
Yeah, I think, like Seth said, lots of Zoom hours, but I think something that we did really well and something that I was fortunate for was that we planned for a lot of different outcomes. We planned for if we were totally online, some of each, if we were all in person. And I think that kind of helped us go into the season with a little bit more confidence, knowing that we kind of had a plan for each outcome that could have potentially happened. And I think we were really fortunate to be able to have an in-person season for the most part, except for those first couple of weeks that we were online last year. So I know lots of planning, but it turned out really well, in my opinion.
Yes, building off of what they said, I think a big term in the terms of the 2020 season was flexibility, whereas being ready for whatever happened. Because at first, when we saw there was a possibility of it being a completely online season, we were like, okay, there isn't really much we can do about this, but we got to be ready to make it the absolute best we can. And that was kind of the mindset going forward into the season as things changed and kept happening. We knew it wasn't going to be a traditional season, but that didn't stop us from making the best of it. We still had a good time.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you guys going in were very open-minded and ready to just go with whatever was happening. Now we're going to fast forward a bit to that first Zoom meeting with all the members. And I know Emily and Seth, you guys talked about it. You were having a little bit more of the behind the scenes look of what took place and plan all that out. What was the hope going into that meeting, and what was the hope coming out of that meeting?
I think the biggest thing was just trying to establish the community atmosphere that we so often have with pod when we were in person, and trying to get that to come across when we were online. And that was kind of difficult, but I think we managed it well with, splitting people up into smaller groups and kind of trying as much as possible as we could to, have people get to know each other. And I think we did a really good job of that. But I think that was definitely the challenge of the whole season was, how do we get people to feel like they're in community with each other when we are online for some of these meetings? But yeah.
Right. And that community aspect that Emily is talking about, it was a challenge. And for me, I think it was a big goal to try to engage people in pod, especially like the new members on that very first Zoom day. I mean, they were coming to UD super fresh, and we wanted to give them the most authentic pod experience that we still could. Because we know when they come to band camp, typically, they get hit with the full force of what is pod in 1 week. And we couldn't necessarily do that um, over the 2020 season. So our biggest thing was, how do we get these people engaged? How do we encourage new members to stick around? How do we get the message across that this is going to be a fulfilling season and we're going to do the best that we can with it? So that was one of the biggest challenges I remember from the first meeting. And there were a lot of new faces. That class is huge. And it took some getting used to. Like I flipping through the Zoom pages and being like, okay, putting the name to the face and like, when am I going to see you on the field and stuff like that. So engaging the members for that season during that first meeting was super important.
Now, let's go to band camp. It was 3 days long. Ronnie, being a section leader at that time, was there a struggle to like lead your section and especially to get to know the new members at that time?
Yeah, so definitely one of the struggles was kind of like putting the names and faces and like recognizing everyone, especially with like the fact that we all had to be wearing masks at that time. Before the season started, we had several like Zoom calls as like a section, kind of like, have a chance, get to know everyone. Because as Emily and Seth said earlier, a big thing about pod is the whole community aspect behind it. And with this whole like it's starting online, we wanted to try to convey that as much as we could, even though we couldn't like actually be there with them. So we had like a few Zoom calls kind of to get to know everyone. And then the first day when we're all back, like we knew of everyone because of those Zoom meetings. However, like getting to actually know them in person was like a whole different experience, especially like being the section leader of a trumpet section, which was like 30 people. Me and my co-section leaders definitely had some time figuring out, okay, how are we going to like make sure everyone feels involved and feels valid, even though this is completely different than what the normal season was, and how can we still make it so this season's experience is still feels valid in like the future when things go back to a normal experience.
That's great. And I know like getting to like have like putting names to faces, and obviously with masks it was hard, but like still making sure that like you had a lot of time, like making sure you knew who your section was, and no matter that struggle, you would always make sure it was great. Now, there were no football games in that 2020 season. How did pod sort of counteract this and still make the 2020 season worthwhile?
Well, first and foremost, we still put a show together. We still picked music to play, and we actually rehearsed. We rehearsed as much as we could outside that season, and that I think was a huge motivator, is just having something to do. And what we were building up for was we obviously did virtual performances that we recorded out on the field. And so that was our main goal, was to kind of, in a way, I think it was good because we exposed pod to the world that is the internet. And it was a different way of getting our music out to people, which I thought was really cool. And so depending on the platform, you can reach just as many people online as you can in the stands. I know like my family watched our videos from home instead of being able to make it to a football game 4 hours away, So having music, having a show to learn, and then, realizing that, hey, we're not playing for a live audience, but there are still going to be people watching this. That was the way that I felt like we tied in a really cool way to make the season happen.
I think also, the fact of we usually only do live performances, and now that this was recorded, it kind of gave us an opportunity to kind of hone in on some of those smaller details, and we were able to do multiple takes and really put our best performance out there for the world to see on the internet. So that was something that we hadn't really encountered in pod, at least myself, was doing these recording projects and being like, okay, here's what we need to focus on, let's rep it another time, and then that time can be better, and that could be what we post. So I think that was kind of a unique learning experience for all of us as well.
Yes, definitely. It's especially the whole aspect of like having our performances like be recorded and like being on there on the internet even after they happen has been like a really big silver lining of like the 2020 season. I'm teaching in Leesburg, Ohio now, and a lot of my students don't know like what the Pride of Dayton is. So like I was able to show them videos of that, like, hey, this is what I did like back when I was in college marching band, and they're like, wow, that's actually really cool. So I was able to take what we did this year and then use it in my current professional life now, which is a really cool thing that we wouldn't have been able to do if it was just one-time performance.
That's great. That like still like making the season worthwhile is like just the incredible part of all this, and even Ronnie having to like be like, hey, this is what I did, and even your students being very much like, wow, this is awesome. Now we come to the end of that season, and at the end, do you all still feel like you made the most of that season, even though it wasn't the season you probably dreamed of?
Yeah, of course. I think for me, I am just so grateful that we were able to be in person and we were still able to rehearse every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I know a lot of college marching bands around the country didn't get that opportunity. So I'm just extremely thankful that we did and were able to perform in some capacity in our 2020 season. I'm just super thankful for that we still were able to be a part of pod in whatever way possible. So yeah.
And Ronnie talked about the silver lining. And I think another piece of that was pod was an outlet for every single member in the band to break quarantine a little bit and get outside and do something that made them sweat. And I think that is really underappreciated in like a regular season, because students are bogged down all the time with homework and classes. I mean, you are a full-time student at UD, and especially with the pandemic and people not being able to leave their dorms, not being able to go to public places, not going to class. The fact that we were still able to meet as a group on the field was huge for my mental health, because it was something to look forward to 3 times a week, where I could go out, I could say hi to people with my own voice, and even give like an elbow bump to some of the section leaders. And so that part of it, I think, was what made it so significant, is because it was such a big difference in terms of the rest of our lives going on with the pandemic. And that variation made you excited, and it gave you more energy every single time you showed up to rehearsal.
I've said this once and I've said this before, but I definitely think that our class of 2020 went out with a bang in the pod season for what it was. There was so much positivity like all throughout the whole season. Like there wasn't really a time where we were all like, man, this is rough. We can't do like a normal season. Everyone was like really optimistic, positive, like, okay, we're going to make the best of what we have. And honestly, I really think that came through, especially speaking with some of the new members this past weekend at the games, talking about how like that season was like a really fun season for them, even though it's completely different than what they're doing now. They still look back on that one and think, man, this was really fun. I'm so glad. I'm glad that things are different now, but I'm also glad that I had that experience with pod and like have this, so it's not like all a new experience, but like they can have like ease their way into like the regular season, because we had this different season where we were able to focus on things we wouldn't have been able to focus to in the normal.
That's awesome. Like even still like getting to have like the silver lining and just like going out with a bang and all like just the great things of still making that season worthwhile. And now finally we come to the day of September 11th. You guys heard about the chance to return to the field, and now you guys just got that opportunity. It's here. Getting to be back to see some of the members and going to that first rehearsal on the field at Welcome Stadium in 650 plus days. What was that feeling like?
To put it shortly, incredible. It felt so great to be able to like be back there again for like one last time. Like as soon as I got that email saying like, hey, we're going to be doing this for like the members of the class of 2020 get their final football game, I signed up right away. I was excited to go back there, see everyone, see like meet some of the new members, kind of see like how like first years were like surviving in this new season. And from what I heard from a lot of them, they're having a good time. And like the stuff we worked on in that past season of the 2020 season is still carrying over in 2021. Tradition from that season are still alive and thriving. It felt so great to see everyone again. It was a good time.
It was a really cool experience. Go ahead, Emily.
Oh, you go.
Okay. It was awesome. And I was like thinking about how long it had actually been. And it was our last game was November of 2019,
Yeah, it was.
and we did not play until September of 21, which is almost 2 years. And to think about that, of not being in Welcome Stadium, is just crazy. And so being back there was almost a little surreal, but at the same time felt totally normal, because it was like, yes, there's my routine again. There's the Saturday morning at 8 a.m. I need to get out here on the field and rehearse and be ready for the game day. So that was a really cool experience, and I'm glad Mr. Will invited us back. It definitely gave, I feel like, the seniors that were there some closure,
Yes, for sure.
for lack of a better word, because I mean, we miss being in front of the stands. We miss playing for the Dayton community and supporting our football team, and it was a blast. And I did not have quite the chops to keep up on the mellophone, but that's okay. We were there, we enjoyed it, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, it felt totally normal to me to be putting on blues on a Saturday morning and getting ready for morning rehearsal. Honestly, even though I'm not living, on campus anymore, it still felt totally normal just to get up, get ready for game day, and that same energy and excitement was still there, which was really cool. And it was awesome for me because I was able to conduct and play marching baritone, which I haven't been on the field doing marching baritone since my freshman year, before I got drum major as a sophomore. So it was kind of like it was really nice for me because it was kind of a full circle all the way from my freshman year throughout my senior year and coming back for this performance, just kind of doing both conducting and marching. It was really fun. It was a really great time.
Now, Emily, you did mention this, and I'm heading to this next question. Emily and Seth, you each got to conduct part of pregame once again. What was that feeling like?
It was awesome. Being on the ladder is one of my favorite parts of being drum major. And the way you can just conduct expression through how the band responds to your conducting, and kind of take control and like relish in the responsibility that you have. And it was an opportunity for me to be super grateful to have a band that was willing to never I half the band at this, or like that large freshman class that we had this current year, had never seen me or Emily conduct. But they took it well, and I was extremely grateful to conduct the Pride of Dayton one last time. And it's something that I will miss forever. And if Mr. Well ever wants a conductor back, he always knows where to find me or Emily, because I mean, I can speak for her too. It's just something we both love so much.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I'm a band director now, so I have my own band that I conduct every day, but there's just nothing like conducting pod. And it was super special, like Seth said, to be up on the ladder again. And I was just blown away by pod's sound this year. They are so strong musically this year, and in a way, it felt like I was conducting the same pod that I knew, but there was definitely different aspects of it, and I was just blown away by how musical they were. So that was a really cool feeling as well.
That's awesome. Just getting to hear how you guys even getting back up there and just getting to hear that pod sound for this year, and just always being if you ever need a conductor, I'm here. I love that you two are just always ready to be on board and conduct again. Now we head to halftime. Your names are being called as you head out onto the field, and we got to perform The Blinding Lights by The Weeknd, which we performed during the 2020 season, and Talking Out the Side of Your Neck by Cameo, a Pride of Dayton classic. How did it feel to perform both of those songs for the crowd at the football game? Speechless.
That's a really good word to describe it. Speechless. Yeah, I definitely when I was out there, I was like, wow, this is what it's like to perform with a full marching band again. This is wild. Oh man, yeah. Blinding. Seth mentioned this earlier, but part of Blinding Lights was realizing, oh man, I don't have the chops for this anymore. It was like for the next like 3 days, I could feel like my lips being tingly from playing trumpet. I'm like, ooh, that's what happens when you teach general music and don't play your primary instrument anymore.
He got the tingly lips.
Yeah.
Every brass player's nightmare.
And then yeah, during neck, the trumpets have like their own signature dance that they do during the break. And I definitely like went like way too hard on this. And I was feeling it later in this dance. I was like, ooh, I'm too old to be doing this now. But it felt so great in the moment to be doing that and just like really being out there like, oh, this is like tradition. This is like why I kept doing this group every year, because the fun community musical aspect of the Pride of Dayton marching band is just living through me once again.
Yeah, Pod never ceases to challenge, and they Ronnie would agree, but they threw us a curveball with playing Blinding Lights. And Emily and I had not even played that one during the 2020 season because we conducted it instead.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Will, here's a curveball and play a song that you never played before and learn it as fast as you can, which was fun. And we always enjoyed the challenge. But I would say the most fun that I had out there was during neck and cracking a few dance moves in front of the Welcome Stadium crowd. If you ask any veteran of Pod, they'll tell you that I frequently crack dance moves in front of the band and in rehearsal, just being goofy. And so getting to do that one last time in front of the Welcome Stadium crowd and the rest of the band was super fun. Just to go out there and be myself one more time for Pod and show everyone how much I love the group. So it was a great time. Neck is always a jam and a chop buster at that. And like Ronnie said, feeling the lip fatigue there on the mellophone was definitely surreal and something I hadn't felt in a long time. So I want to thank Pod for having this back, and it was a lot of fun.
And now we head to now. If you could sum up that whole game day experience into one word, what would it be?
Satisfying.
Surreal.
One word, so hard. Let's see. Satisfying, surreal, fulfilling.
Nice.
Satisfying, surreal, fulfilling. I love it. And obviously, you guys have graduated and move on to bigger things in life. What have you guys been up to since you left the University of Dayton?
Well, these two goons are teaching music. Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah, I am the band director and choir director / music teacher at a really small school, Hardin Houston Local Schools in Houston, Ohio, about 15 minutes from where I grew up. And so it's been an interesting year so far. But it's really great to be able to do what I went to school to do. And I'm learning a lot from the students, and, just being a first year teacher, kind of just taking it all in and rolling with the punches and, trying my best. And it's been a really fun year of making music so far. And we have a performance coming up this Friday. So I've been getting ready for that. So that's been exciting.
Yeah, I unfortunately did not go into music, but I am pursuing medicine at this point. So I'm working as a medical assistant in a small family practice that's pretty close to UD. It's Caroline Family Practice. It's on South Dixie. If you've been to Walmart, you've probably passed it. So right now I do stuff like give vaccines and draw blood and do wound care on patients and make phone calls, send prescriptions, things like that. So I am definitely getting hands-on experience in the medical field as I try to send in applications for med schools. So I've got those going right now. I'm starting to interview with some schools soon. So that's intimidating but exciting at the same time. And I'll be around UD's campus until probably next May. So hopefully by then I'll have somewhere to go in the fall for school, and the rest is history from there. So,
Man, I have to follow that up now. Okay, Mr. Med School. Oh yeah, just like Emily, I also majored in music education, and right now I'm teaching K-5 general music and middle school choir at Fairfield Local Schools in Leesburg, Ohio. And yeah, it's been fun, like getting to put to practice like all the stuff that I've been learning these past 4 years about teaching music. And as Emily can justify, the first year teaching experience is quite a roller coaster. So I'm making the best with what I can do through that, having a good time, learning a lot from my students. They've been really positive and like welcoming. Same with like the entire district. So shout out to them if they're watching this late in the future. Go Lions. And yeah, it's been really great to like take all the stuff I've been learning at UD and put it into practical use, especially because a lot of the stuff I learned from Professor Will, the director of the Pride of Dayton Marching Band. So shout out to him also.
That's great. Just getting to like be a part of it, like getting to be a part of everything and doing what you actually like studied for and are still doing that. And Seth applying to med school. I'm sure that's an experience.
That's a doozy.
I hope things continue well. And that is all the time we have for this episode. And that's all the questions I have. So thank you all so much for watching this episode of podcast. If you like it, give us a like and please follow us on all our social medias, Facebook and YouTube at the Pride of Dayton Marching Band and our Instagram at Pride of Dayton. I want to thank Seth, Emily, and Ronnie for being on the show. Thank you all again so much for watching, and yeah, pod!